morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my Director General, Havlova, who couldn't be here because she's accompanying her minister on another assignment. So she asked me to replace her. I hope I'm going to be a good replacement, and you'll all enjoy the discussion in this very important panel that we have on creating an innovation ecosystem around IoT. A lot has been said here already about IoT, and not going into numbers, we can talk about predictions about the millions of devices that are connected already, the tens of billions of devices that can be connected, and the hundreds of billions of devices that will be connected 2020 and beyond. In order to take best or the most advantage of this evolution that has come from or stems from our need to communicate, we will need a number of things to have in place or to adjust a little bit to these upcoming trends. And we'll need talent, we'll need skills, we'll need infrastructure, we'll need support from a number of sides, we'll need a market for it, and we need a platform. And it's my great pleasure to welcome the guests of this panel debate who represent all of these things in one way or another. Allow me to start with Ms. Marketa Havlova, who's the head of globalization of the SME unit of Czech Invest from the Czech Republic. We have Mr. Masaryk from the company Hostak, who is the Director of Innovation and Product Development. Mr. Laszlo Bacsa from the Demola Platform, from the Director of the Demola Platform, who's in charge of technology and knowledge transfer. Next is Mr. Navalpotro, who's from Numa, Paris. Mr. Maciej Sadowski, from the founder and CEO of Startup Hub Poland. And Mr. Vacher from IoT Valley, the manager of IoT Valley program. Gentlemen, welcome, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome. If you allow me, I would like to really kick off this debate before we go into specifics. I would like to kick off this debate with a sort of a general question that I'm going to direct to you, and it stems from my recent discussion from a professor from Stanford, who's very active in supporting the startup and scale-up ecosystem in Silicon Valley. And we have been discussing a number of topics, and when IoT came up, he didn't seem excited. I asked him why, so he told me that in the Silicon Valley, in the ecosystem, IoT is not really considered a market that many big players bother about. I was wondering, given the initiatives the countries have in place, that you guys are putting in place, your activities, I would be very curious of what, for example, Ms. Marketa Havlova would have to say of this in the Czech Republic, and how is your view also in the V4, since you hold the presidency, would elaborate on this.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. I work for Czech Invest. It's a state agency, and we are helping startups, and we are developing the startup ecosystem in the Czech Republic. The IoT is very growing sector, and also our projects are focused on high-tech startups, which includes the startups from IoT sectors. In the Czech Republic, we have also specialized accelerators and the incubators who help directly to companies from IoT sectors. This is from my point of view the introduction of the Czech Invest activities and the brief insight of Czech startup ecosystem.
Thank you, Marketa. Simon, if I may turn to you now. You represent the IoT Valley, so that's already something that implies that IoT is quite big.
Yes, it's getting really big in France. We have a lot of startups that grow really fast and has a huge impact in the IoT world. Your question about the IoT, we've already seen the impact of the IoT in the B2C market. in the way we consume things, for example with the dash buttons, in the way we move ourselves with the Google cars and automotive cars, in the way we heal ourselves, and it has changed a lot, and it's going to change always, every day more things in our lives. But in the IoT Valley, we focused on the B2B impact of the IoT. So we believe that this impact is going to be much bigger than what it has been with the consumer market. It could be the predictive maintenance, in the security, in the transport field, and all kind of work are going to change thanks to the IoT, and it's already happening, and it's going to be bigger and bigger every day, I believe.
Okay. Thank you so much, Simon. If I can turn now to Roman Navalpotro. I forgot to mention he's a corporate hacker. So if you will turn off your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on your cell phones, dangerous. Simon, I guess so. Corporate hacker means that you cooperate a lot with companies, so you basically help them understand what IoT can bring, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe.
No, it's more, it's not only about the IoT. What we do is basically innovation consultancy for corporates, and we answer two requests. One request would be digital transformation, and the other one would be, I want to accelerate my product or my service development. So that's why we call us corporate hacker. Because we try to change and switch the mindset of the people working within a corporate company.
And you work with a diverse range of private companies, ranging from Cisco, General Electric, Total, and even the city of Paris. Now, the city of Paris, if I may, you can also touch upon the other ones, but the city of Paris is of particular importance when it comes to the idea of markets. Is this something that you would really highlight, the cities being markets for IoT?
You mean the city being a client for IoT products? Yes, definitely. To give you an idea, last year, well, we just closed a few months ago a program that we called Data City. We worked with the city of Paris. They provide us, they gave us their data, and we worked with startups and corporates to create new products that would leverage those data. So that's definitely something cities are looking at right now.
Okay. Now, still staying in the, let's say, public sector or looking at cities, I would perhaps now look at...
If I can add just one thing on your question before to Simon, where I think it's true that there are a lot of expectations around IoT, but also we observe that for the end consumer, for example, there is a high, for example, on the health and all the bracelet device, usually you buy one, you use it a lot during a month, and then you just put it back in this box and you don't use it anymore. So I understand also why there is a lot of doubt on IoT, because today you still have to, I mean, you always have to take into account also usages and people behaviors, and sometimes the industry goes faster than the people's behaviors, I think.
I don't want to exhaust my questions on you, but I have to stick with you. So you're also sort of going to marketing as well, right? Or
I have a background in marketing, in branding.
Branding, perfect. So would you have any advice for products as well in IoT, but also perhaps in entities that are trying to position themselves in this IoT market, how to avoid this? How to really prevent people putting the device back in the box and basically not the product not dying?
Yeah, I would say test and learn, and always put in the loop of the product development your end user. That's the only advice I would have on that.
Okay, so data, feedback from the users, and continuous testing. Okay, perfect. Now, perhaps if you could still stay in the public sector, I will turn to Maciej Sadowski. A very interesting startup of Poland, and I would also like to highlight that we also see Poland as a little bit of an example, since you created the Innovation Council, part of which is the Digitization Council. I don't know if I'm translating it rightly. How would you see the support that I already mentioned from different sides, basically now from the government side? How would you see that? Is it really making any changes? I mean, you have the Morawiecki plan, which is also focusing on applying IoT in industry. So how is that really fitting into what companies are doing, what startups are doing in Startup of Poland as well?
Thank you very much for having me. This is first of all. Second of all, I will explain that Morawiecki, this is the last name of our Vice Prime Minister, who is in charge of, let's say, a super ministry of economy. Earlier we had few spread agencies that were dedicated to innovation, and right now he just controls that. And the plan Morawieckiego is just a plan for industrialization based on, let's say, high-octane, high-technological solutions, especially delivered by startups. So, I just need to give you the vocabulary necessary to understand the question. I understand it very well, and thank you for this question. I would say maybe just after I introduce myself, because I owe you this. I run an accelerator that is dedicated to IoT solutions in Warsaw. It's called Startup Hub Warsaw. But I also run a foundation, Startup Hub Poland, which is dedicated to strengthen the gravity of our markets, and it's not Poland solely, but also our regional partners, to gather or attract more talents from our neighborhood. Because we believe that in spite of, I read the poster just in front of the conference, where you had a very good sense, in my opinion, underlining or scratching what are the necessary elements of the ecosystem, like authorities, startups, VC funds, banks, big industry players, infrastructure providers, and so on. Universities, research centers, and so on and so on. But I would say that the most important, the sine qua non condition, is to have hell a lot of startups, correct? Really, really massive amount of, or number of good, productive startups that will become eventually scale-ups. This is what we are doing, and I use this maybe short description to answer your question. Our government, but I think all governments in so-called rising Europe or New Europe, these 13 new countries in the European Union, all governments understand that we are not as friends right now. Namely, we do not have huge, grown-up and mature venture capital market. In order to produce such a market, in order to kick off wealthy gentlemen and ladies who are willing to invest in something and to attract them to invest in startups, not in furnitures and paintings, you need to subsidize the market. Lots of my colleagues from US saying, your startups here from Central Eastern Europe, they are very cool, but you know, they are a little bit contaminated for me because they have public ad on the board. And I said, okay, just I would love to have 100% of private shareholders on the board of our startups. But unfortunately, we are more like you in the 60s in Silicon Valley, when you have heavily subsidized your startups, especially in double usage technology from military and ICT, of course. This plan Morawieckiego that you have mentioned, it's very much dedicated to the widespread focus. Well, maybe it's a very oxymoronic sentence, widespread focus, but let's say vertically divided focus on the most important for Polish economy horizontal verticals, which are based on high technology, and to give them a massive public ad. This massive public ad, it's not to be consumed once, but it needs to attract private investors. So making the whole story that is already being too long a little bit shorter, I will just say that our government is saying, if you want to get public ad, which is available because of European Union funds, it's available. You have to attract a private investor from France, from Germany, from Poland, from Saudi Arabia, wherever you like. But if you bring a letter of intent or an investment agreement signed with a big industry player, which is private, we understand that you are on a very good track in order to become a scale-up and a good company, and we'll heavily support you with public money.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So, because the money, the chunk of money, let's put it that way, is pretty big on the Morawiecki plan, right? Of the support for startups. So you have been able to...
3 billion.
Okay. So that is already making a difference, or
it's already making the taste of a big difference. But still, I need to be a little bit skeptical, otherwise the old speech would be not fruitful enough for you. We need to be skeptical all the time. I would say that 3 billion zlot will change not too much unless you have a fair supply of startups. If you have not 500 startups in Poland, but 3,500 startups, then this money will be matched, and then you will have a good return on investment as a country.
Very last question to you in this relation. So, and in investment, so there are strings attached, right? So I assume there's a lot of mentoring involved as well. So there's conditionalities on how the money is spent for startups.
You mean on the very top administration level, yes?
Well, in the actual implementation of the...
Okay. So it's like, in Poland we have 3 public agencies that are dedicated to spread this big fundings. One is National Center for Research and Development, and it supports most of all research and development. The other one is Agency for Entrepreneurship, which is more like for, I would say, soft applications, like online portals, something that you would not maybe very much call a super hardcore technology, but enterprises using these technologies. And the third one is Agency for Industrial Development, which is for scale-ups, not for startups, or for bigger units. And the nice thing, of course, they are having panels of experts and they are evaluating heavily projects. The criteria are based on the private involvement. If you have a private suitor, then you are very, how to say, you rise the probability of rising public subsidies. Also, if you, they are inviting lots of international experts to evaluate startups that are coming for money. We believe that although in the Visegrad group we are the biggest country, we are still too small to make use, sorry for this term, but make use only of Polish experts. We are too well communicated. That's why we need colleagues from other Visegrad countries or from other European Union member states, and even outside of European Union. And they are helping from Israel, for example, and they are helping evaluate projects, and they are not biased when they see, let's say, a successful entrepreneur. Polish expert would have said, okay, this guy or this girl, they are very successful, and we should give them as much grants as they need, because they are our stars. And the guys from outside who have zero knowledge about their past actions or the fame, they are more scientific in their decisions. So yes, there are panels of experts, you have to fill lots of criteria. The government wants, or those agencies want the application to be very good, so very often they have to just stop the money and saying, guys, this season we didn't have 100% of good applications. The money is waiting for another season, another 2 quarters of the year when you will have better applications. This big money is a bless and a curse at the same time. Really, there are lots of discussions in Poland how to adjust the system, not to lose even 1 penny from it.
Still, I really like this idea of experts and the basically knowledge transfer, so we'll touch upon that in a moment, but still sticking to money and to investments in this area. I would turn to Simon. If you could, so basically you also cooperate with the private sector, with big corporations like Intel, like Samsung, Microsoft. Could you maybe tell us more about the cooperation, or how do they see, do you have to convince them to tap into the potential of startups in this area, or do they make enough use of it?
No, we don't have to convince them, actually. The thing is, we decided to be specialized in the IoT B2B market. Very specialized. So, by this specialization, we have a lot of visibility in France and abroad. So the large corporations, like you said, are coming to us. So there are two different type of corporations. There is the sector corporations, like trade transportation, SNCF in France, health insurance, banks, and so on. This is the sector corporations and the technical corporations. So what we do with the sector corporation, we say, okay, let's find out where are your costs, your biggest cost, or what are the new market that you can address with the IoT solution, and we are going to find a startup in Europe to work with you. So they pay us for making this connection, and secure the innovation through startups. So this is how we work with large corporations, with the sector corporations, and with the technical one. Obviously, because they like Intel, Samsung, Sigfox, EBV Electronics, and others. They have product, they have technical solutions that they want to push through startups. So they work with us and help the startups grow faster, build the best product through their solutions. That's how we work with them, and we make sure that they invest money on the startups, time with the startups to help them grow and help them to go to their own markets. So it's good for them, good for the startups, and we are here to make the connection and to make sure that it's gonna work.
And in making that connection, so there's a lot of stories that we hear about big companies basically investing into startups or consuming newly emerging companies with newly emerging technologies. Is this the case as well, or is it really a cooperation then, outsourcing innovation or acquiring them?
No, it's we realize that large corporations cannot innovate. It's too long, it costs too much money, it's really difficult for them. And as the IoT is really new and it's really technological, then it's really hard for them to innovate. So we try to push them to innovate through startups. But it's not saying that they are going to acquire the startups or anything. It's just cheap, fast and secure innovation for them. And at the end, it's a client relationship between the startup and the big company. The startup can work with another large company, it doesn't matter. And at the end, if the big company wants to invest in the startup, we make sure that the investment is it's not the whole equity of the startup. It's just a small amount to help the startup grow faster and to keep an eye on the startup and be involved in the decision of the startup, but not too much. Otherwise, the startup will just die.
Okay. So staying in the area of outsourcing innovation or open innovation models, I would now like to turn to Mr. Bacsa. Maybe you could tell us more about the work of the Demola platform. You basically annually you have more than 100 projects in various areas. Maybe if you could tell me what areas you focus on in these projects, what is the success rate, what is the survival rate, of course, as well, of the project.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you to inviting me, and I'm honored to sit on these chairs here among you. And first of all, I have to clear another thing about Demola and about me. So first of all, I'm coming from a University of Technology from Budapest. Demola is an open innovation platform within Europe and beyond. I had to ask a question. Do you know Demola? So is there anyone here who knows Demola? No? Okay, just very short. Try to hear. Okay, so just very shortly. We are, first of all, it's based on a win-win-win solution. So we are looking for challenges also from big corporates, small companies or students. And we published it on an online form, and students can apply for a challenge. A challenge means a kind of problem related to technology, product, service or market segment. It could be anything. It must be not a trivia, not a specification to do. And from students, we create multidisciplinary teams. And those teams are trying to find a kind of solution. And it's very important that all steps must be related to a kind of lean methodology, so they must validate every step they are doing. Demola is facilitate the whole process. At the end of the project, students demonstrate the results, and the partner can decide either to take it or leave it, license the results or not. It's very important. This activity is based on co-creation. It's very important. And just get back to the startups. We are talking about startups related to IoT, but to having more startups, you need entrepreneur. And having entrepreneur, you have to, it's not a good word to teach them, that to show them how to be a good or successful entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur doesn't mean that they have a company or they have an invoice book and mobile office or something like this, but it's a way of thinking they must have. And it should start it within the university or during the university studies. In Demola, as a network, I'm head of the Demola Budapest, which is started as a program of our technology and knowledge transfer office within the university. But this is an open platform, so we are open all the universities in Budapest for Demola projects. But Demola right now in Europe there is 12 hubs already, and also beyond Europe we are in Mexico, and from this year South Africa and Namibia as well, and more hubs will come soon. And yes, we are working on challenges together with big corporations and also small companies, and also students could initiate a project. But this is a very early stage. I mean, a proof of concept level they can reach after a project. It's related to their semesters, so it's approximately 3-4 months in every semester. And then at the end, the students can get credit points, and if the project is successful, they can get some revenue from the company from the last.
Let me stay with you. So are these projects, or the topics of these projects, these are submitted by the students themselves, or the selection process, I mean? Because my question stems from really my
selection for what? Selection for
the topics, the sectors, or the things that they work on.
When we started to do that, we tried to select it.
Okay.
But no, we are not selecting, the students are selecting. I mean,
so
we can publish, it must be a challenge. I mean, it must be not a specification. There must be some kind of challenge to find a solution, a real solution with value. And if it's not interesting for the students, then they don't apply for it. They don't apply for that. If it's interesting, more will come.
Right.
So this is the selection.
Okay. Well, more in terms of I'm thinking more of a pipeline or something like that, which is too strong a word, because it really, I think a lot of people will identify some sort of dictate with this, but. More from the perspective of industry, perhaps, because IoT is not only about startups, but it's also about industry and the impact that it can have on industry. And the industry, from my interactions with a lot of industry representatives, they identify a lack of skills and perhaps output from really the grassroots, from the startups and scale-ups in this area. So really my question in this sense would be, what is or since you have this open innovation platform and you're also in the university in Budapest, what concrete activities would you tell us about directed at industry and the industrial needs?
So we started with Demola because there was no any interest within the university and the university ecosystem related to entrepreneurship, or I can say utilizing research results or the intellectual assets of the environment. And so as we started Demola as a best practice to dynamize this activity within among corporates, university professors, researchers, students, and so on. And we establish a location. You can say we could say it's an incubator, and right now it's full with, I can say, wannabes. So we have a lot of groups and projects are working on that. And as we are a technical university, we just realized that most of our projects are related to technology, and the biggest part right now is somehow related to IoT. So, but we are not an IoT incubator. And what is very interesting that most of our cases or most of our projects are B2B, because in IoT, so you must have a kind of infrastructure to reach your users. And most of the cases we are lacking with financing those projects, and it's very difficult to find funding, even from angel investors or venture capitals or private investors. And that's why it's good to have good relation with corporates, because big corporations have a basic infrastructure. They got the connection to end users, and those way we could connect those initiatives to the real market. And I just would like to add to the cities, which is what very important, because most of the cases, I think it's not the equity or not investment is the most important. I think the market, I mean the buyer, the consumer, that's the most important. In that case, cities, municipalities, government, or the state itself could be the first buyer of some
Indeed, and I think this is especially in coming from Slovakia and having a little bit of an overview of the ecosystem here. I think this is a market that still needs to be opened up and taken full advantage of. And in this sense, perhaps I could turn to Mr. Masaryk. So your company basically is working with ICT trends, providing ICT solutions, and one of your clients is also the government. Maybe if you could tell us your experience in this sense, working on projects, a number of projects, basically going from road network models to really iGovernment solutions, and maybe you could tell us how this cooperation works and what would you welcome more, where do you see more potential, more implementation of your products or smart solutions?
From the point of the projects which we already run with the government, of course it's nice cooperation, everything is okay.
You can be honest.
Yeah, but what else should I say? But I want to react on what was said on 2 points. The first one, it used to be that we said that innovation is equal to startup. This is a big mistake. I give you a question. Before the startup, we called it the startups. Was no innovation? No. There was innovation in universities. There is still innovation in corporations. Otherwise, they will not exist. Yes. And this is, I think, one of the mistakes which we made with all the topics is innovation. The second one is about the ecosystem. 2 years ago, when we recognized the IoT trend, we recognized one thing. The IoT is, you can split it in 3 things. The first one is sensors. You have hardware. The piece of the hardware which is in the terrain, it gets the data. The second one is the connectivity. And the third is the software on the top of that. Yes. What was different was that most of the companies, or at least in our space, was focusing on one of this segment. Nobody was taking all. The second one, most of the companies was like, okay, we see just the things which we do, not the rest. And the third is that each of the segments is going through big dynamic. It means, for example, in the area of the sensors, the price. Look at the price now and 5 years ago. Look at the possibility to build your own sensor in the relevant price. The second one, connectivity. When you said the connectivity 5 years ago, there was equal is a telco operator. No, it's not equal anymore. The connectivity can be solved different ways. The platform, right? From the point of the platform, we have some kind of the visualization, but all the technologies like the big data and anything, you make more way what you can do. And what we recognize, because Hostak is a software vendor, is that we want to create IoT solutions, which means that, okay, we stay in the area where we are good, which is the software, and we have to find the partners for the rest. And that was a reason why we established the IoT community in Bratislava 2 years ago, to really find a partnership. When we talk about the ecosystem, for me, the right ecosystem is where is a place where you can find a partner for IoT solution. And the partner means that in IoT we have one big problem, and it's called business case. It's a nice name for the piece of the technologies of everything, when we talk about the business case, usually is a problem. Yes, because the basic calculation and you are okay is not. Yeah. Therefore, we really establish this community to find the partners and to have a place to find the partners. When we talk the ecosystem in Slovakia, I'm not so good in Hungary. I know a little bit about Austrian ecosystem. I still don't see any more places to cooperate. I see places like the lab is, which you're running, which is a fab lab, you can see. But this is a places where you're concentrating on prototyping hardware. This is not a communication place. This is another place when you can really find the partners to prototype, to think about the business cases, to find a solution. And this is the thing which I think is really missing in Slovakia. I don't see so many activities in university. We tried to cooperate with the university, but this was a disaster. Yes? And when we talk about ecosystem, try to concentrate on business cases and partnerships. This is maybe my point to this discussion.
Thank you very much. Maybe I can ask Bacsa to assist a little bit to my vision as a security.
Okay, so we have some questions on Slido. Actually, the first one from Josef Vajda. Internet of Things brings tremendous business opportunities. Europe seems to lose this battle against USA. What would help us to regain our position? I think maybe it's a question for all of you. How we can be better than US?
Than US? You said US.
United States of America.
I like this ambitious question. How can we be better than US, which is United States of America? Lots of people, especially journalists in Poland, loves the leads on the or highlights on the beginning of their articles. Can Poland become the second Silicon Valley, or when Warsaw will emerge as a new Silicon Valley? I think that it would be very healthy and hygiene for us to forget about Silicon Valley as a navigation point. It's literally impossible for our four countries combined together with best friendly partners from outside of Visegrad group to create Silicon Valley. Nor we should want to do that. Silicon Valley is a dangerous place, really. Like you are cool, sympathetic people. Don't turn to Silicon Valley, guys. They are crazy. I think we should, however, find our own unique phase in the chain of development of innovation and play together with Silicon Valley and be the masters in this particular niche. I've heard, maybe you can support or reinforce my thesis, which is based on contacts with Silicon Valley investors and Boston and New York investors, that there are problems in the US for driven entrepreneurs or wannabes, as you said, to rise very fast and efficiently and smartly seed round. It's literally not a problem to get $4 million, it's a problem to get 2,500,000. So why don't we, our region, why don't we become a hub for seeding, a hub for early stage ventures that later will eventually create their filias and sales points in Delaware or Palo Alto. Because attacking the position of Silicon Valley, I think only China can do that with a very complex collective effort. Here in Central Europe, it's not going to happen, and I repeat, nor it should happen, in my opinion. It's a historic. Silicon Valley is a historical event. We should not copy a historical event in 21st century. We should create a new one.
Okay. From my point, the comparing to another success, which is over, is not good strategy. The second one is the IoT is opportunity, but can be taken only if you really establish the communication platform when the people can connect fast, find a solution to prepare it for the market. I think in this area we are failing. I'm a leader of the community, and nobody from the government talk about the community in Slovakia. I talk with the government in Austria, not in Slovakia. I communicate with the partners in Austria, not in the Slovakia, in the companies. Yes, I mean, this is a failing. We are on such a deep level. Don't think about the Silicon Valley. Be pragmatic, yes, and try to really establish the communication between startups, corporates, and just give you an example. Where's an incubator to IoT? The closest is in the Brno, and it's only one which I know is around us. Go deeper.
I think we have a big competitive scale advantage compared to the US also because the expertise, developers are really expensive, while in Europe we can afford lower salaries. That's one thing. I think also, as you said and you mentioned, we should also look at China and Taiwan, which are investing a lot now in IoT, but above everything, I believe that the US, they have a market of maybe 350 million inhabitants, while in France, for example, we are 60 million. And I strongly believe in Europe and in creating a European market, so that our startups can scale up and achieve a massive market much more faster. Because today, when the startups want to really scale up and goes global, they move to the US, because it's just a massive market, and they don't have the offer in Europe.
There is two things which I think we are advantage in. The first one is hardware. When I look on the Czech market and Czech companies, they're really good on making good hardware for a good price. Also in Slovakia, also in countries in Eastern Europe. That's the first one. Second one, we are very good developers, right? If we want to be successful, let's base on these two things.
May I join something very briefly? Because I forgot to answer the question actually. I tried to convince you why should we not emulate Silicon Valley, and I haven't answered what shall we do to become better. There is one factor which is my personal mission number one, and this factor is perfectly being exercised by the US. Namely, they know how to attract talented people, how to keep American brilliant engineer at home, and how to bring new one from Taiwan, from Eastern Europe, from France, from all the planet. Poland is a very good and very sad example of a huge brain drain. After Romania, we are the silver medal in European Union. Every year, thousands of high-profile specialists are going to Canada, US, and Great Britain, mostly these three countries. Germany is different because it's very close, so we are going there, but it's not a solid immigration. Just, I would say, just normal migration. They will eventually come back and will benefit from their skills. We should do everything we can to motivate our dear colleagues from Russia, from Ukraine, from Kazakhstan, from Caucasian countries to make a step for 2-3 years for one and a half startup in Central Eastern Europe, and then eventually the US will gravitate them anyway if they are super good. But at least we should, you know, wave from the map of the planet. Hey, we are here. Central Eastern Europe is very sexy. You should come here and join us because we give infrastructure money, very good hardware in good price, very good developers. All of this, we should play as a team and attract people. This will lead us, our countries, for our brilliant minds to stay. In Poland, my colleagues, I am 32. Lots of my colleagues moved from Poland. And if they knew that there is Sasha, there is Chao Ku, and there is Saida and other guys from outside of Poland who came to Poznań, Kraków or Warsaw to start their business, I think they will consider twice or 3 times before they go outside, because they will say, hey, we were striving to find this international habitat, and we have it here in Central Eastern Europe. We are speaking all languages, mainly English. And it's cool. It's cool. We can stay here. So we need to create this coolness around our countries. Of course, within European Union and within Visegrad Group, because separately, Poland or Slovakia or Czech Republic, although we have our cool advantages, we do not exist on the big map. So playing together and attracting talents. Sorry, I promised to be brief. I haven't been sorry.
So if there are no more reactions, I would like to talk a little bit about an idea, which is an innovation hub. And this is another buzzword, much like startups or innovation or these number of things, and it's on the EU level now. It's one of the initiatives by the Commission, and it's very much a question there about Industry 4.0, 4.0. So it's really in relation to this, and basically the industry, a lot of the debate there basically mentions IoT as one of the enablers of the entire industry movement, smart industry. What the innovation hubs, or digital innovation hubs, what they would like to do is basically combine all the things that you have mentioned here. So basically create a platform for cooperation, for knowledge and technology transfer, for attracting new talents and really having them spend here, developing new products, and really approaching IoT also a little bit horizontally, creating partnerships. And a very important thing is also involving traditional businesses. So if perhaps I could also close the panel with this a little bit. If you could summarize your suggestions, what would be your idea, or how would you visualize such a hub? Because there's no clarity on what is the form of this app. Is it a virtual space? Is it really something around the university, a really tech and knowledge transfer center, or TTO? So if you could summarize this, and basically, if I understand correctly, it's bringing all the things together, so it could solve all our problems.
I would start with that. So we started in our university to create a place where people can meet. First of all, within our university there was there's 8 faculties, 8 different kind of disciplines, scientific field. They are working next to each other. They are drinking coffee or having lunch next to each other. But there was no any structure or way or any organical way to share this knowledge. So they know each other by face, researchers, good ones, professors, but they don't have a clue what they are doing, the other ones. And it was also difficult to create an innovative project or to do higher scale project. You need more competencies because it's very difficult to have a location within the university. So I wanted to create a place where anyone can access if they have a project, and they can work on the project, invite others even outside from the university, but never know who to meet with. And so that became our place as a center of innovation, and the communication is extremely important. And it's very difficult to start the communication. I used to say our biggest resource in our lab is the coffee or the coffee machine, because that's the place when conversation starts, and it's very important to know each other. And also we started to create meetings in the Budapest startup ecosystem, and at the very beginning it was just a few people, and it became every month we have a meeting, and after that it was more than 100, 150, so we have to stop it, do it in the university, because it was very difficult to close the events every month. And just one other thing, I recommend to have a physical place. I mean, just a place where you know that it exists. There used to be, or there are programs there are fixed programs. I know for example, I'm just coming here to Bratislava, and I know that there is going to be a place here, and the people who are related to that are going to be there, or some of them will be there, who knows others, and I have get connections like that. And the other one, just to get back to this Europe versus USA thing, that it's also very important that we create solutions, hardware-related solutions. We are very good in research and development, and but the one thing is that we create solution, but most of the cases there's no real problem. I mean, there's no demand on the market for the solution. And this is also a key thing, that not just create a place, physical place, or it could be virtual, to meet with others, other researchers, other developers, other startups, investors, but you have to meet with the customer as well. And it's very important in the state that the state government is a customer as well, not just a promoter or things like that. Municipalities and all other institutes as well.
Maybe before somebody else takes the mic, I just wanted to say that there's a number of activities this week in Bratislava, also because of the presidency, and which focus on cross-border regional cooperation and smart cities and smart regions. So if anybody has an opinion on how to bring this into the mix, as you already mentioned, really how to, please, Laszlo. how to really, this market, create this market, or enable this market, or access this market, bring the market into the mix. Because that's obviously one of the markets that, again, apart from the private sector, the public sector, this could be something where we can. This is where the problems actually exist, if you put it this way.
This place which you mentioned is already starting today. When we established the community, the primary focus was on the content which the people will share, and to bring other people to communicate, be on the physical place on one time to have a discussion. The format was easy. There was 2 presentations, a discussion in the pub. Really, nothing more. This is functioned 2 years, and thanks to all the members of the community, there was presentation only from the members of the community. Some of the corporations come to present the solution for IoT, but it was a second wave. The first wave was really community. The second thing, then what we were looking for the place, because we recognized that, okay, the pub is fine for a one-time meeting, 1 per month. And then we agreed with the Fab Lab, which is already here. And this is exactly what we want to do, to make a place where the people can meet, physically meet, because discussion, when you have a physical discussion, is still the best way how to make cooperation and to know each other. Therefore we go to the Fab Lab. Now we have meetings at the Fab Lab, and we try to establish some kind of place in the Fab Lab. This is exactly, and I think this is a good example to start it.
If I can add my opinion about what makes a good innovation hub. Just for the small story, at the IoT Valley we started with just 3 startups at the beginning. We started in a 5,000 square meter building, so 3 startups, something like 15 people in 5,000 square meters, then you can imagine. It was kind of a big bet at the time. In 3 years we filled this building, the 5,000 square meters building, and then in 1 year we filled 10,000 square meters building. And now we are working on a 12 hectares real estate project to build this big IoT Valley. Because what I think is that maybe the only thing we can take from the Silicon Valley is that they succeed to put all the actors at the same place, especially on the web project. And that's something that we want to do in France, in Toulouse, in the IoT Valley. Because I think that what makes a good innovation hub is first it has to be led by startups, because it has to go fast, it has to be to be aware of all the problematics that are startups to build the best environment for them to grow fast. It has to be as well all the actors, from the hardware, the connectivity, and the software, as you said before, but also with universities for to recruit the best skills. It also has to have a Fab Lab for prototyping fast, and also large corporations, because for the go-to-market, to understand really their needs, to understand why they are ready to pay for, and what is the next thing on the market. So we believe that the localism is really important, as it was said before, that people have to drink beers together, that they have to take breakfast together, or they have to exchange, to go to the same events, to understand what is going to be my next partner for my startup, or who is going to be my next client. And the last thing I forgot, but it's localism and led by startup, I think.
If I may maybe give the floor to you, Laszlo. Also using the V4 Innovation Task Force and this really great initiative that is basically materializing here, connecting V4 with the French ecosystem as well. How can we use that as well to mobilize, also to use the pool of talent that we have, and also engage in cross-border projects, and basically making this innovation hub really cross-border and for the benefit of the entire region.
Yeah, Thank you. I think that the virtual place is very nice and easy way how to make the connection, but it doesn't work so well. As my colleagues mentioned before, the meetings in person are still much more efficient, and we can learn from each other more. We tried during the last year to set up this virtual place for startups, but it also needs people who will take care of and who will meet and discuss the opportunities and the problems and issues related to startups in this case. I think that what we can learn from the US are two things. First is that the networking is very important there, as my colleagues mentioned, to put all stakeholders, and I mean the startups, the incubators, the accelerators, also corporates in one place. It's very important for Innovation Hub because the connections are the most important to establish the new products and new thinkings. So to bring the networking and the experts from abroad, for example from Silicon Valley or Israel or as well the Taiwan or Singapore to CEE region, it's important for our region. Because the second thing what we can learn from the US, it's sales skills. Because in CE region we are very good in technology, and I see it in many startups, but in the way of business skills and sales skills, we are not so good as the people from the United States or the UK, because it began at the elementary school, that they are motivated and learn how to sell themselves, their products, and so on. So this is, or these are the two things: the networking and the sales skills, which we can learn from the US. But I agree with my colleague that we cannot copy the Silicon Valley, because there is the historical point of view and also the sectors and the business environment is changing. So we should take the best from the success stories, but implement it our own way, which should be our own innovation way how to support startups. Especially in the CE region, there are no investments in seed round. Most of the investors or business angels in CE region, they are invested in more developed or scale-up startup, because it's because it's less risky. So that's also why at the Czech Republic we are now establishing the National Innovation Fund, which will be dedicated to support seed companies or proof of concept companies or startups which will grow up at the universities, because this is also very important to start business thinking at the university, because there is a gap between education and the business. And we should learn, for example, from MIT, from Massachusetts, how they are doing it, because this is very important for our economy and the innovation and the future development of CE region, or as well the France and other countries.
Time is running out, and I'm half a minute over, but Roman, you still have the mic in your hand. Two sentences, really short.
Two sentences on your question on the innovation. I was just thinking that before adding and investing in anything, I would simplify what currently exists. Because, for example, today it's really hard to understand what funds, what innovation funds you can access, and when you find one, you have to spend like half a year working on that. And being a startup and spending 6 months on getting a fund is not reasonable.
Here, that's a very, very nice closing remark.
I will not take the microphone for a longer time because I did it last time. I just want to believing you. I just want to invite. I will not answer this question. I will invite you to an interview that I made with Vice Mayor of Warsaw, the city of Warsaw. I'm running right now this experiment of explaining Poland. Like guys are talking what is. Actually, we are emulating this panel, and on our website there will be this interview. And he said one brilliant thing that I like most of all. He said, "You know, they are in charge of administrating Warsaw for 8 years. People like them, and they say we are trying to make Warsaw the hub itself. We even make the bus stops in such a convenient way for that it will be the shortest way from Google campus to, for example, Warsaw Technical University." It's very interesting. The model of it's actually a new layer of the city. It's not a new infrastructure, just a new layer of existing infrastructure. Thank you, and Samson.
Thank you, fellow panelists. Thank you so much for your insight, for your input. It was a pleasure.